Hey everyone, and welcome to Found Friday. It is June 5th, and we are basically at the halfway point of the year. I've got my favorite partner in crime, Ginsmetrics founder and CEO, Ray Grieselhuber, here with me. So welcome, Ray.
Thank you.
So we've done a lot of discussion recently about kind of how to assess and measure your current marketing situation and make adjustments. We talked about a lot about kind of using the halfway point of the year and the summer doldrums and things like that, as well as Google algorithm changes and other updates to make some of these adjustments. One of the things that's often overlooked is keyword best practices that attract the right visitors to your content. And there are lots of reasons to kind of get a refreshed view on keyword best practices, keyword and topic findability changes, the industry, competitor landscape, stuff happens, available keyword tools shift, and your content hopefully has changed too, over the last 6 to 12 months. So making sure you've got like the right keywords for your content and are tracking changes is really important to kind of your overall brand findability. So let's talk about some of the questions that we hear from our audience. So we'll start out with kind of a baseline question, which is, what is keyword ranking and why is it important?
So most people can pretty intuitively understand the concept of ranking itself in the sense that, when you're searching for something on Google, most commonly, you're looking for some topic, and when you put in that search query, obviously you're going to get a list of different pages. So most people pretty much get that. What's easy to forget, and what people don't really think about, even people who are pretty experienced marketers tend to need this reminder from time to time, is that the rank matters for a very specific reason. There's a reason that you want to be on top, and obviously part of it is just because that's where most people are likely to see your result. But even in terms of specific numbers, there's a reason for that as well, which is for a keyword to really be valuable to your business, it needs to have a certain amount of people actually looking for something on that keyword. So we talk about this in terms of search volume, and we take measurements from a lot of different data sources to help marketers estimate how many people are roughly searching for that keyword on a monthly basis. But then the other part of that is something that we call the click-through rate, which is if you rank number one, and this also makes intuitive sense, but a lot of people don't always think about it. If you're ranking at the very top position on a search results page, you are much more likely to get a higher percentage of those clicks than you are if you're ranking even on position 5, which is still on the first page. And so what you really have to do is keep those two things in mind: the overall search volume, the number of people looking for that keyword on a monthly basis, and then the actual click-through rate. And there's a lot of data. We have data built in directly to Ginsmetrics that has click-through rate or CTR data right there. So you can basically estimate your monthly potential traffic from a given keyword based on your ranking. So keeping those two concepts in mind is really important.
And one of the things that's really interesting about kind of the evolution of why keyword ranking is so important is it used to be kind of that you could control this a little bit by gaming the system and, doing a lot of things on your own time with your own marketing efforts to rank specifically for a keyword. If you were willing to do the work, you could make it happen. Google's recent algorithm changes over the last, say year or so, have really been focused on ensuring that the content that you're creating is married better to the keywords that you're trying to rank for. And one of the reasons that this is really important is what you were talking about with click-through rate, right? So it used to be, like your number one and your click-through rate is a lot higher, but if you had kind of gamed the system to rank for a specific keyword and the content that people got to after they clicked on that link was not what they expected, they were going to drop off, right? So you would have a huge bounce rate associated with these keywords that you'd spent all this time ranking for. And so Google is actually somewhat trying to take care of some of that for you. And it's like, hey, you know what? We're actually going to change. I actually think one of the things we'll see change is bounce rates will hopefully stop being so high associated with top ranking keywords because hopefully there's going to be a better match between the content that people actually get and the keywords that you initially kind of were seeking to be a part of. So speaking of kind of how this keyword stuff works and why all this is important, let's talk a little bit about how keywords fit into the competitor landscape and why it's important, to know what else is ranking for the keywords and the topics that you want associated with your brands. Because there's a lot of reasons, I think, to pay attention to what's going on in the landscape, because it has so much effect on overall findability.
Definitely. And that's actually, it's kind of the next point that really becomes the topic to consider when you think about what search volume and what CTR rate, click-through rates mean for your business. The more keywords that you can find that are relevant to your business and your competitors' businesses, the more opportunity you have a chance to measure overall market demand. And so you can use these keywords and their associated search volume and their click-through rates as a way to get kind of like a share of voice or a market share reading on things. And so you may think that you have only a potential visitor volume of X because you're only paying attention to a certain number of keywords, but really it could be, Y, because if you start expanding out the number of keywords that you're paying attention to and other keywords that your competitors are paying attention to, there actually could be a much greater market opportunity that you're not even paying attention to, that you're missing entirely. So understanding the overall market and doing some really good analysis in order to get a good reading on the market size, and then estimating both your position and your competitors' share in that market is a critical strategic move that you need to do both up front and on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And it kind of goes into a question that we were going to jump into later, but I think that this is a really good time to address it, which is people ask a lot about what's the best way to find keywords with a lot of traffic but low competition. And I really think this is not necessarily the right way to approach this. I think it's less about lots of traffic and low competition, which seems like something you'd want, but actually what you really want to do is find the most relevant traffic to your content, and hopefully have the best content to cut through the noise. And this maybe keywords with 1 million searches per month, or maybe keywords with only like 50 to 100, kind of searches per month. But what we're really advocating for is that people go with the more specific keywords that target the precise users of your products and services, as opposed to like these really broad topics that everybody's kind of trying to rank for and that may not really be relevant. So, if you look at it kind of as a pie graph, right? And say you wanted to do something really broad, like say what you're selling is men's trail running shoes. If what you're saying is, oh, I just want to rank for shoes. Okay, well, maybe a really, really small portion of that pie is actually something that would care. So stop spending your time trying to rank for shoes, and instead really focus on the topics in and around the industry and areas of conversation that you really care about. Even though it has lower search volume, it's probably got a lot more relevant search volume. You're probably going to have lower bounce rates, higher click-throughs, and eventually higher conversions.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. That's a classic mistake, and it's something that, again, bites people who have been doing this for a while, because you have everybody from the CEO of your company asking why you're not ranking #1 for shoes if you're in the shoes business, which is basically impossible unless you're. I mean, I'm not even sure Nike or Zappos could put
I was going to say Zappos, maybe.
Maybe. So you just have to be realistic about what the opportunity is to rank, and understanding. Another thing that's really important is understanding the types of searches that people are doing. So there's ways to categorize it that are commonly referred to as things like navigational searches versus searches with commercial intent. And a navigation and also like informational searches. So a navigational search would be someone's actually really just trying to find a specific part of a website, and they're using Google to help them navigate it. An informational search would be something like maybe reading up on about like an actor or a movie, and a lot of times you're going to get really good content just on Wikipedia and sites like that from that. And then searches with commercial intent are they kind of have a range of a purchaser's or customer's kind of, we call it the customer journey. It's basically this idea that people usually originate their searches online for a new product that they're interested in with very basic things like best shoes for running, or best brands for fall fashion or whatever. And so they'll look at these things where they're just trying to get kind of inspiration and ideas. And then once they've decided on a brand or a model or whatever, they're going to start getting very specific, and they're going to do things like best price on Nike, black Nike running shoes or something like that, where they're basically they've decided what they're going to buy, and now they're looking for the best deal. And so being able to categorize these searches within your own business is also really important, because you can tell how much effort you want to spend on acquiring visitors to your site, and it can also help you frame the conversation when you're speaking with the executive team around, like, okay, look, shoes, yeah, it's a great keyword, but there's not really necessarily commercial intent behind that, and it's probably not a relevant keyword for us to be pursuing anyway.
You know what's really interesting about that kind of conversation about like where people fall within these different types of searches is that one of the things that marketers focus on a lot is the idea of the funnel, right? And it's almost as if what you'd want to do is match your keywords to specific parts of the funnel, so that you could really understand what's generating awareness versus what's really kind of in the more consideration phase versus like what's in the intent to purchase and conversion phase. And I mean, that's not to say that keywords cannot be part of every aspect of the funnel, but like what you're saying is there's kind of like this exploratory phase that people may go through about asking, you know, more general questions. And then they kind of get into this more research phase of like making a choice. And then they have the opportunity to go to a specific site and make a purchase, or to find a place to make a purchase, and then go to that physical brick and mortar store, however, you know, depending on what it is. Ironically, I just looked up shoes on Google, and shoes.com is #1 and Zappos is #2.
Yeah,
so it is
more of a domain with the actual keyword in the domain.
Yeah. You know, and I think that that's a lot of why, you know, one of the things we saw back, you know, a number of years ago was people buying up a lot of domains and kind of sitting on them. And also one of the reasons that the US has a lot of patent trouble when it comes to kind of software and tools is because there's a lot of very broad language, unfortunately, that doesn't take into account the more specific nature of people's brands and marketing efforts. So I think that marketers and a lot of like niche providers are probably running into some issues right now. All right, so another question that somebody had was, do you have tips for using keyword information to find trending topics? So, you know, there's kind of a lot of ways to do this, and, you know, I'll go over kind of how I use Ginza to do this, but Ray, do you have any specific thoughts?
Yeah, and you'll probably touch on this when you talk about Ginza metrics, and how we have some of these tools within Ginza, but the canonical source of data is Google itself. Most people who have been doing this for a while are aware of the Keyword Planner, which is basically a tool that is part of the AdWords campaign kind of manager tool set that basically allows you to research new keywords that you would potentially buy ads for. And the reason that's useful is because when you're doing research on a keyword and you want to know how many people could potentially see your ad, it's also targeting the exact same source of user acquisition, which is search, just happens to be different data between paid and organic. And so you can get pretty good rough estimates of organic search volume from that same number. So people will use the keyword planner data. We have that integrated directly into Ginza metrics, so you can use that as a keyword research tool right there. And then also another really good one is looking at, I'm a big fan of getting people to spend more time looking at their own data because they don't really do it enough. And this became really difficult for a while, about a year or two ago, when Google implemented secure search and basically started obfuscating all of the keywords that were driving traffic for people. And so you used to be able to get this really rich set of data from your Google Analytics, directly showing you exactly how many keyword searches you were getting for different keywords. And they pulled that away, citing security reasons and so forth. And for a while, people were kind of left out in the dark. Fortunately, they boosted up the functionality in Webmaster Tools, and so now you can get that. It's not the exact same metrics. You're not seeing visits. You're seeing clicks, but it's close enough to be relevant. And you also get CTR and so forth. So we also have that integrated directly into Ginza metrics, and we have the discovery tools that are usable from that, again, built directly into Ginza. So you can use that as a way to really mine a lot of traffic that you may not even be paying attention to. So those are two really good ones to start with.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of changes that have been made that have made what used to be kind of one methodology of research, have to switch modes. And so one of the places I always go for Ginsimetrics users is the top keyword activity area, which a lot of people overlook because it's kind of down at the bottom of the dashboard homepage. And it really, what it does is it's really cool. It highlights the most improved ranking keywords that you're tracking for your content. And then it also does the same thing for your competition. So what you can really see here is where a lot of big moves are being made in changes in rank for content kind of across the board as matched to specific keywords. So one of the things that's cool about this is it starts to tell you where audience members are paying attention because things are changing in rank, and that has an effect, but it also tells you where your competition is spending time and energy on their marketing efforts as well. So I think that that's a really good place to take a look. You know, for a lot of folks, one of the things that they miss out on is they'll look just at their data, you know, like for their content or using their keyword planning tools, but they won't consider how their competition's kind of marketing efforts in that same industry are affecting things kind of across a broader scale. So I think it's important to keep an eye on that stuff. And it's one of the reasons that we, you know, did competitor discovery and keyword discovery and all those things, was to give people kind of more of that information. So speaking of keyword discovery, you know, like, let's talk a little bit about what that is and why marketers should pay attention to it.
The discovery portion?
Yeah, keyword discovery.
Yeah, so the discovery is really important because it's something that they're getting a little bit of an echo here. So keyword discovery is really important because again, it goes back to creating this universe of. Get my headphones on. All right, sorry about that. I hope that's a little bit better. So the discovery portion is really important because there is this concept of the overall universe of keywords that you're targeting. This is kind of what we were mentioning at the very beginning, where if you are missing keywords, if you're missing an opportunity to capture specific keywords, you're basically leaving those entirely open for your competitors, and it's market share that you could be taking advantage of and you're not. And so keyword discovery itself is really important because it's that process through which you go out and find exactly the keywords that you should be targeting. And what that means for you as a marketer and a content creator is, once you've determined the keywords that are relevant to you, that's the set of keywords that you should be targeting when you're creating your content.
You know, it's funny is, you know, there's an old saying, which is like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that's really important about this is people will say, I have this list of keywords, and this is either what we track now or what we've always tracked, which is really dangerous, right? Because it means that you've gotten stagnant with your keywords. And this is one of the points of today's conversation, which is you need to make sure that you're keeping this information fresh, that you are updating your keywords and the topics, not only to match your product and services, but to match the way that people are discussing them. Over time, linguistics changes, the way that people discuss things and talk about things changes, and the features that people are interested in likely change as well. So even if you think that you're in an industry that hasn't changed in the last 100 years, I guarantee you something about your industry has evolved. And so the things that you track and the way that you track them probably needs to mirror that. So one of the things that keyword discovery is really great for is kind of refreshing and keeping on top of what all's kind of going on in your marketplace, not just for you, but for competition, and looking at how keyword discovery and competitor discovery work together in tandem will show you competitors that are, or other brands in your market that are creating content that attract your audience based on these keywords and things that you are targeting, and then looking specifically at the type of content that they're creating around those keywords can oftentimes give you clues into what else might move the bar, you know, when it comes to real traction for your company. So I think one of the things that we were talking about, you know, a long time ago was, let's go back to this trail running shoes thing, because it's been my long-standing example, is let's say I am a manufacturer of trail running shoes. Maybe one of the things that actually ranks really highly, or somebody that's competing with me that I wouldn't have normally thought about, is somebody that makes information about trails and weather, you know, for people who actually use these shoes, right? So maybe what I would want to do if I was, say, Nike in the trail running shoes creation department would be to create a map of, like popular trails in different areas, and, create forums where people can discuss the best trails to use the shoes that I'm making. So there's like so many other content opportunities out there that maybe I would not have thought of because I'm really busy just focusing on the features of the shoes and the price of the shoes and how I'm better than everybody else's shoes. Like maybe I should be focusing on how to talk to the people who would buy these in different places.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's it's a really good point. And the other thing that's interesting about looking at what your competitors are focused on, and this is something that's been really challenging for people, and we're actually developing some new cool features around this that we'll be releasing over the next few months, is actually being able to, in real time, get recommendations for new keywords based on your competitors' content as they're creating it. So this is something that is a really important thing for people, and we're seeing a lot of opportunity to help people kind of discover new keywords there as well.
Speaking of kind of talking about finding new keywords and GINS metrics and like all these other different opportunities, I want to leave off this week's episode with finding the right keyword tool. Like, what's out there right now, and kind of how have keyword tools evolved a little bit over the last year or so, and is it time for an upgrade? Or if you're not currently using something, should you be? I know you mentioned kind of Google's keyword planner tool. Like, is that enough for everybody? And like, is that kind of just, if you don't want to spend any money, is that cool? Like, should you just use that?
Right. So it's going to be hard to beat Google in terms of source. There are other tools out there that will do things like help you find new keyword combinations that you may not have been thinking about. There are some APIs and services out there that do some like a semantic analysis of things, of existing content. They can help you find some ideas. They're all really valuable, but again, you really have to go back at the end of the day and see what Google thinks about those keywords in terms of overall search volume, in terms of trying to figure out the actual opportunity for those keywords. And then from there, I think it's this integration of that data into the rest of the context of your business is the part that's going to really make it relevant for you, which is why we emphasize that so heavily within Ginza. If you're looking for resources and basically really good listings of tools, the best article that I've found so far, there's a site out there called backlinko.com, and he has an article called The Definitive Guide to Keyword Research, and it's a long article, but by the time you finish reading that, you're going to know pretty much everything you need to know about doing really good keyword research. So I usually point people in that direction.
And so for people that aren't necessarily in the United States or the UK. So say folks in Asia, where, you may have like DOM, Naver, Yandex, Baidu, Soku, Kihu, whatever, is over there. What do you think in terms of like, what would they need in terms of a tool? Is there something that you would recommend, or is every search engine have its own kind of localized tool that you can use, or are some folks just going to be in the dark?
Some have them. So Chihu, as far as I'm aware, does not have anything. Sogu, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have anything either. But Baidu, they do. They have an API. Their APIs are a little bit tricky to work with. They do have an interface that's similar to like the AdWords bid management interface, and I think you can get keyword search volume from there as well. But it's all Chinese. It's not localized in English at all. So you need someone who can read and write Chinese in order to actually interact with it.
I mean, so what about using Google's keyword planning tool or Google's tools just in general, and kind of applying them to whatever other search engine? Do you think that there's any similarity there? Like, could somebody get by with using Google and then applying it to something on another search engine?
Yeah, you can. And it kind of depends on which country you're talking about. So Google has a majority market share in most countries around the world. The major exceptions are China, Russia, and Korea. Pretty much everywhere else, you're going to get a very reasonable proxy. One other probably side note would be like Japan, where Google and Yahoo Japan have relatively equal market share. So you're going to be missing some of the search volume there, but it's still pretty reasonable. But places like China, nobody uses Google. Russia, it's a very minority search engine. Korea, nobody really uses it. So Google just doesn't have the data on the searches, the number of searches for different keywords, and it probably doesn't even have the freshest keywords in there. So it'll be better than nothing if you don't have access to the Baidu data, for example, if you're in China, but it's definitely not going to be equivalent to the quality of data you can get natively.
I mean, and this is where using a platform where you can kind of look at multiple search engines and get some data, you know, like the way that we track across multiple countries and things can be really helpful, especially if you're a global brand and you need information across kind of these multiple different places, especially when you're talking about being able to actually localize into different languages or track searches in different languages. You know, having a way to actually segment those out and follow those over time. You know, that's a really tough thing to do without a more sophisticated tool. You know, speaking of kind of what you guys were talking about last week, is there anything in terms of keyword research that's different for people on that are focused on mobile?
Yeah, so mobile is actually really interesting. Luckily, the Keyword Planner does provide a mobile filter for the search volume data that you can get, so you can get pretty good data there. Also, again, when you're looking at your own data within Webmaster tools, you can apply a mobile filter to that too. You can see from your own traffic data where those keyword searches are coming from. Baidu, I would actually have to go back and check. As far as I'm aware, they don't provide any of those filters. So if you're talking about a country like China, then you're a little bit out of luck on getting really super accurate readings on that. This is going to be an area where you know, the next year, I think really people are going to be paying more attention to this, and you'll probably see some better updated versions of tools that are coming out with more support for mobile.
Well, hopefully, you know, folks who haven't updated their keyword research and keyword tracking views over the last year or so will kind of consider doing that. You know, we talked a few weeks ago about this time of like summer doldrums for a lot of folks, you know, especially those in kind of the more B2B enterprise space. So this may be a really good time to kind of go in and reevaluate and take a look at that. And I know that some of our conversations over the next couple of weeks are going to help, you know, folks who are using this time to kind of reevaluate second half of the year marketing strategies, kind of come together and figure out what are the best places that they can do some really good, you know, things that shouldn't take a ton of time necessarily, but should yield some great results. So refocusing on keywords, understanding kind of keyword and content marrying on your site and how that really works, and then kind of redeveloping some strategies around that should hopefully give you some more relevant traffic, if not necessarily more traffic, but more relevant traffic, which would hopefully create some more conversions. So with that, unless you have anything else to add, I think we are done for the day.
Yep, I think that's all I had.
All right, sounds good. Well, I will see you next week.
All right, sounds good.
Bye.